Okay, so this is episode 3 of the Know You series. This is, we're going to be talking about guilt. How exciting. Guilt and maybe a little bit of doubt. Because these, in deprogramming or deconstructing this idea, this ego complex that there is a you here, the beginning and the end is always, you're gonna start with guilt and you're gonna end with guilt, as well as doubt. So let's first talk about, well, doubt. In any of these processes, if doubt exists, you are blocking your helpers from helping you. So you must look at the doubter in you and say no. The universe doesn't require you to believe in them, but to remove your doubt so that they have room to do your work, to help you, to make changes in your life or transformations. So you have to look at, do you doubt the invisible world? Do you doubt yourself? Do you lack self-confidence? All these things that, do you question nature of the spiritual world? So first look at doubt, because any doubt blocks the helpers and blocks your higher self from communicating with you. So say no to doubt, the doubter in you. Work on that. And then there's guilt. So if you haven't figured out already or haven't been told, guilt has absolutely no cosmic basis whatsoever. It is a purely ego-created phantom concept. And it's interesting, I looked up the origin of the word guilt, and it really has an unknown origin. They speculate that it comes from the Old English word gylt, guilt, which was to mean committing a crime. But that word itself has no origin. They can't find the source of that word. So there you go. We don't even have a word origin for guilt. So let's throw that guilt out the door. So guilt was created, obviously, by the ego, personal and collective, for control. And the ego created guilt so that it will put the blame on you for all of the illnesses, because guilt is the source of all illnesses. And if you were to know that the ego is the source of all illnesses, but it created guilt to take you off its scent, because now you're going to guilt, you're going to self-blame, and you're not going to realize it's actually the ego and its thoughts that have created whatever illnesses and pains that are going on in your life, or fates. So the ego created guilt. What else do I want to say about guilt? Oh, it is number one, it's the main cause of illness, if not all illnesses. All illnesses, that's what the I Ching says. It is the basis for all illnesses. It is the biggest robber of life force. One of the biggest, along with doubt. Guilt blocks all of your helpers. So even if you've had a miraculous healing, or you've deprogrammed something, or you've received a healing from a healer or something, if you have guilt, say that particular guilt that created the illness, if that comes up again, then you've reinstalled the illness, or you lose your life force, or things are going along just fine, and then you have guilt and suddenly you feel blocked. Doubt and guilt are the two main things that block you in life. So we are going to talk about, let me check my notes here. I can't talk, deeply on guilt because I haven't studied it extensively. So, we all know what guilt is, and we know it doesn't exist, and yet we feel guilty. So, yeah, that's all I'll say on that. So there are 3 main ego complexes, and they're huge complexes that out of these complexes, all the other ego spells, thoughts, images, all the other stuff kind of stems from. So let's look at these 3 main ego complexes. The first ego complex, ego guilt complex, is guilt towards God complex. And this comes right out of the Bible or in any of the ancient religious texts, where this is where man was given rules and commandments about how to live, standards about how to be the most moral and best human being. And by giving us rules to live by, we moved our sense of right and wrong, our sense of cosmic right and wrong, up to our head and away from our feeling body. So this guilt towards God's God complex also diminishes all of our feeling body, and it blocks our feeling helpers from being able to. We don't recognize our feeling body, so we can't know what's right or wrong because we've denied our feelings. We've been told not to trust our feelings, that we have to think things out and rational and all that sort of stuff. So the guilt towards God has really put a dampening on our feeling consciousness. What else? We've been given rules to live by, this guilt towards God complex. And the biggest one is, excuse me, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Ooh, I have to put it on pause. That commandment that you must love and obey God. And the other one is guilt and self-hatred for not being able to love God and others enough. This is a huge complex. So even if you're an atheist, you don't have any religious background, you're going to have something of this. There's some moral thing embedded in you. Oh, I don't love that person enough, or I don't love society. Whatever, you feel this kind of guilt. And because we've been taught to love via the mind, we try to mentally love, and that will never work, and it never feels right? Because it's all coming from our mind. So we feel guilty that we don't love God enough, we don't love our neighbor, we can't walk around feeling all lovey to everything that's going on, and we feel a sense of guilt. Or we have some shoulds and must-dos, and we shouldn't do that, all kinds of moral rules that we're supposed to live by. And that goes against everything in the cosmos, okay? As far as love, the I Ching and the sage talks about that love is a spontaneous feeling. It's not a mental thing. You can't, and love is not this human thing that we all know about. Love arises spontaneously as we're driving around and we see a beautiful tree, or we see an animal or something. And love, when you get that smile on your face automatically, that's love. That's a spontaneous love. So we can't walk around and pretend like, oh, we're all spiritual people. And this complex can go towards the spiritual journey and the spiritual community. Oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm supposed to love everybody. It's all these rules. Okay, so it's not the religious, it's spirituality. All these rules that we think we're supposed to be living by. I didn't do that right. I didn't do that right. I didn't act like an enlightened person, an awakened person, blah, blah, blah. Guilt, 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 okay? This all comes under the ego guilt complex of guilt towards God. So, this is things to be aware of in your life. Where are you feeling guilty? Or are you feeling guilty because you're living an ordinary life and you have a regular job and you're not being spiritual, you're not out there being a healer and some fabulous YouTube psychic or something, I don't know, or you're not, a missionary. The cosmos has never required that of you. So look at that, see if you have any of that guilt hanging around, okay? And the second, so what guilt does is it damages this Trinity relationship. It's the relationship with ourself, with God, and nature. So the second complex, ego complex, is guilt towards self complex. And this comes with all kinds of spells regarding our body, our animal nature, sexuality, our wildness, our elimination process. This is guilt towards, we've elevated the mind over the feeling body, that our animal nature is flawed. What else? Humans need to sacrifice their animal nature. All these things that are talking about the body as not being clean, blah, blah, blah. Humans needs to transcend their animal nature by developing their higher nature, that our animal nature is lower and that our higher self is better, so we don't really view this as equal. And this guilt towards self, let me back up. I should have said that while guilt has no cosmic basis whatsoever, there is a thing of cosmic blame or remorse. And they have value in the cosmos. So when we go against our true nature, if we say, oh, I wish that thing would die, or, I hate that person, or we go against, our natural, we know it's not right, we feel a sense of remorse immediately, okay? And that's a cosmic blame. It's a trigger, and it makes you feel remorse. That is perfectly fine. And the moment you feel remorse, then the helpers can come along and clear maybe what you've just said or done, or what behavior has taken place. So remorse is perfectly fine. But when we take remorse, and either our parents, we've acted, we behaved in a wrong way, and instead of just saying, no, that behavior is not right, then they go ahead and slap on, they say, bad boy, bad girl, or you're such a naughty thing, or they've labeled you in some fashion. That has created the guilt. When we add the label or particular phrase on top of the remorse, oh, you're such an idiot, or you're always the one making problems, whatever. And we do this to our animals too. And please, 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 you can say no to your animals. Here's the thing: when we have the domestic pets, where they're at in their evolution of consciousness, they've a domestic pet, they've already individualized. They've left the group consciousness of animal consciousness, and they've already split off into individualized soul. So they are already creating an etheric record, okay? So, and we've given them names, so they really now have become an individualized soul. So they're already accruing karma, memory, etheric memory. So when we say, no, you're a bad boy, you know what we're doing? We're creating guilt. So let's change our wording Let's speak to our animals better. And yeah, because, you know, it just breaks my heart every time I say something. I go, oh, I just don't want to put anything into their etheric record so that they have to come back and deal with that. Okay, so no labeling. So remorse is perfectly fine. We feel sincere remorse, and the cosmos and your helpers can go to rectify whatever the situation is, but don't linger in the remorse, okay? So we've had guilt towards God complex, guilt towards self complex, and all the ways that we feel guilty about our bodies. If we make our bodies a culprit, like, oh, my neck, it's always hurting, and you make the body part or the illness a culprit, then you've put guilt on your body part, and you've now taken away the helpers from being able to help you, because you've called the body something and it's not a culprit. The only culprit here is the ego, okay? So we have to be careful how we speak to our body. Guilt towards self, like we're born with original sin. Guilt is just something of being human. And these are this also has to do with, you know, some of the things that we do in spirituality. Oh, I have to have a clean vessel. I have to sacrifice. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. I have to do this ritual. All of these things about the body, cleaning the body, the cosmos has never asked us to do any of this. This is all ego, mind, ritual, controlling behavior, okay? If you just went with what your feeling body told you, you'd be just fine. Okay, and the third guilt ego complex is guilt towards nature. Okay, so I have my notes here. Guilt towards nature. We all carry this underlying guilt towards nature, because, I mean, you just look at what we've done to nature and how we treat animals, and how the biggest spell in this guilt complex is humans are superior to nature. Humans are the center of the universe. And so that we have a right, dominion, as the Bible says, we have dominion over nature. We know that that's not wrong. In our soul, we know, that's not right. And we have this underlying guilt about how we treat nature. Oh, you know, you could take it as far as recycling. Oh my God, I didn't recycle, or I just bought, you know, plastic water bottles, or something. You know, I cut down this tree, and we have guilt. Okay, so it's guilt towards nature. And we think that we have the ability to control nature, like the weather and all that sort of stuff. So this is all about nature and how we treat our animals. So look at that. How much guilt do you have regarding nature and how we treat Mother Earth? This is huge. Okay, so you can see these are huge complexes, and we feel guilt in very subtle ways. And how do we deprogram these? Well, you can use the coins. In the previous video, I showed you how to get yes or no. You can ask to see, you can ask the sage or your higher self, do I have any of these complexes? Rest assured you have all three, okay? So why don't you just think about these, contemplate all three of these. Where do you feel guilt? Guilt towards yourself, your body, towards nature, animals? Do you feel superior, inferior? Do you think your higher self is better than you, that there's a hierarchy, you know, that the angels and the gods are higher off than you are, and we're just lonely humans? You know, do you see this inequality? and then guilt towards God and all these rules that we're supposed to live by, some moral compass, and not being able to love our neighbor, feeling guilty about that, all that stuff. Okay? Look at that, have an awareness, and then write down on a piece of paper guilt towards God complex with all your ways that you feel guilty in that. Write it down. Guilt towards self, all the ways that you've demonized your animal nature, and guilt towards nature, how you feel guilty about nature, treatment of nature and animals. And you're going to spend 3 days. This is the deprogramming process, and I know I should do another video on deprogramming, but deprogramming these 3 guilt complexes. It's going to require a minimum of 3 days, and deprogramming processes always take a minimum of 3 days, consecutive days. And all you're going to do is get into just a very short meditative 1 to 2, 3 minute meditation. And you're going to visualize those complexes written on the paper, and you're going to use fire, because these are such massive complexes, ego complexes. We need fire to burn those up. This is very similar to doing this in a fire pit. I mean, we've all heard those ceremonies. Burn them up and say no, no, no to each one of those complexes. Burn it up. Ask the helpers of healing and transformation to come along, help. You're also going to call in the helpers that free people from guilt, and the cosmic doctor to heal people, heal yourself from the damages of guilt. Do this for a minimum of 3 days. Ask your higher self if you need to continue with that. And then let it go, or keep doing the deprogramming. These are very simple deprogramming procedures. You're going to use fire. And let the helpers begin working on it. So if you have an illness, you might begin to see a lightning. So what happens when the helpers begin to work on things? They start immediately, but they're working at the spiritual level, then the atomic level. And you know, it takes a long time, sometimes a couple of days, sometimes a week, sometimes a couple of weeks, depending on the illness or the situation in your life, for these things to manifest, for you to physically see them and feel them. So you've got to give it time. But during that time, if you say, oh, this doesn't work, or you look for evidence, or you doubt, or you feel guilty, then you've stopped the healing process. So give it at least 3 days and then let it go. Don't look for evidence of healing, and don't say this doesn't work, and don't doubt. If you do, then immediately say no to the doubt or the phrase that you just thought, and allow the helpers to come back in. Okay? So regarding just kind of the generalized things that we have felt guilty about in life, we can deprogram those things. Oh, I feel guilty for what I said to Marianne or something, or what I did in childhood. Make a list of all of those. And we're going to use water, because those come with a lot of feeling. Oh, I feel really bad about doing that, blah, blah, blah. It's in our feeling consciousness. So we're going to use the ocean of consciousness, the water, to wash that off of us. Same kind of deprogramming, 1 to 2, 3 minute meditation. And you're going to visualize that list being sent off into the ocean or washed off of you, however you want to say it. You're going to call in the helpers of healing and transformation, the helpers that free people from guilt, the cosmic doctor that heals people from guilt. Do it for at least 3 days, and then let it go. Let it all go. I didn't realize how much guilt real how much guilt really is in me. And we do it daily. We don't realize, we don't, maybe not, we go, oh, I feel bad for that. But we don't realize that feeling bad is guilt. And it sticks on us. Okay? Remorse is okay. Oh, I feel bad for that. And I feel remorse, and ask the helpers to please, take care of this for you, and then let it go. Okay? So there you go. Wasn't that fun talking about guilt? Okay. Until next time.